Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 8 of Dauphiné 2024. Today's race, it's the last final mountain stage here at Dauphiné. 3 stages, mountain stages, all back-to-back, 6, 7, and 8. Today, 4 categorized climbs on today's stage. Summit finish, 9.5 kilometers at just over 7%. So we know it's a steep climb. When the cameras come on, it's going to be 60 kilometers to go. We see a breakaways up the road at about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. In the breakaway, there is one Ineos rider in there, that's Omar Fraley, and there's 2 UAE team members. It's the Solarism in there, and Tim Wellens is in there. Soler promised after yesterday's stage where he tried to go solo, excellent tactics from Soler. After the stage when he got caught, he said he's going to try it today, so that's why we see him in the front group here, and he's got his teammate with him. But it's the Plus that's in there from Ineos. And when we go back and look at the Peloton, it's Ineos pulling full gas on the front of the Peloton. We're reduced to about a 45 rider group back there in the Peloton, so you know it's been fast and hard throughout this final stage here at Dauphiné. Now this is the penultimate climb. We go up to the top of the KOM, the 4 riders up there still holding about just under 2 minutes and 20 seconds on the Peloton, being led by Ineos over the top. We start dropping down the descent. All of a sudden we start getting into some of the interviews. Primož Roglič says his team's going to do everything and are ready as much as they can be here for today's final stage, but the result is not necessarily the be-all, end-all is what he's saying. He keeps saying that in all his interviews that here at Dauphiné, it's not the result, it's the process of getting ready. What is he talking about? The process of getting ready for the Tour de France, learning your teammates and stuff. I kind of think when I'm looking at the Dauphiné here, this is a good race to win because you got Tadej Pogačar coming to the Tour de France. Jonas Vingegaard might make it. Remco Evenepoel, he's here at Dauphiné too, won the individual time trial. Maybe he wins the Tour de France. It gets a little bit slim pickings if you don't win here at Dauphiné and you got to go into the Tour de France and your Primož Roglič and Bora Hansgrohe that has Red Bull coming on as their main sponsor for the Tour de France. I got to believe winning here at Dauphiné is not a bad deal, but Primož Roglič is always lowering the pressure and always lowering the expectations. Now, the next interview I want to give you, that's from Jorgensen. The American rider from Visma Lease Bike says he's feeling good, and he reminds everyone that when he won Paris-Nice, he started the last and final stage there at Paris-Nice, sitting second on GC to Brandon McNulty, and he won the general classification. So he says if he sees an opportunity, he's going to take advantage of it here. Next rider for the interview to look at, let's not forget him because it's Team Ineos and they're riding the front right now with 5 guys while Omar Fraley's riding the front of the breakaway too. So when we start looking at the Plus's interview, he says they would like to get up onto a podium with Carlos Rodriguez and possibly win the stage. Well, we go look down the descent and we see Ineos going flying through all the corners, but the gap's not really coming down to the break up front as they're still holding about 2 minutes and 15-second gap on the Ineos train behind, and Omar Fraley's rotating through. So why would both groups be riding with Ineos riding on the back and with Omar Fraley on the front? Well, they'd like to get a little bit of gap into that last climb because then Omar Fraley's a little satellite rider up there in case there's a tactical game in the back. Remember, Carlos Rodriguez and De Plus are a little bit down on the general classification, about 2 minutes down on Primož Roglič, so maybe they can attack, go across to the break. They got Omar Fraley up there. Maybe he can pull for 100, 200, maybe 500 meters and help get that gap established if one of their GC favorites that's far down on the general classification, not too far, they're just sitting around 5th and 6th, but they're down on minutes to Primož Roglič, so they're trying to keep the gap a little bit moderate up there to the break of 9. Now they're going to sit up with about 35 kilometers to go, and it's only going to take a few minutes after that before we see Lidl Trek on the front. Mads Pedersen, he's going mad at the front again as Pedersen's starting to bring back the time gap, and he's got help from Bob Jungels from Bora Hansgrohe because Bora Hansgrohe have 5 riders in this front group. They got Bob Jungels on the front, Sobrero's in there, Jai Hindley's in there, Primož Roglič and Vlasov's in there to make 5 guys from Bora. And they got Bob Jungels pulling on the front with Mads Pedersen. They're going full gas. We're coming down into about 15 kilometers to go. We'll see Kwiatkowski drop back to the car there, and he's picking up bottles left and right, ice bags and everything. And before you know it, he's right back to the front there to be next to his teammate to start handing out bottles before the last climb starts. Now we get just under 10 kilometers to go. Bob Jungels drops from the Peloton there. Shortly after him, the climb's getting ready to start. So Mads Pedersen's job's done here on the final stage of Dauphiné. It's up to Giacone if they're going to win a stage for Lidl Trek. With Mads Pedersen blowing with the front group of 9 hitting the climb with about only a 30-second gap, you know these guys are going to get caught for sure because as the climb starts proper, Sobrero from Bora Hansgrohe's up there, but not for very long. Tish Benoot comes to the front. With Tish Benoot on the front, you see him looking back over his shoulder for Jorgensen as Jorgensen started coming up alongside with Tish Benoot to the front. Jorgensen, instead of following his teammate, he slots back a little bit behind the Bora Hansgrohe riders there, but still in front of Primož Roglič, and that leaves Thies Benoot on the front. Now Thies Benoot's looking back over his shoulder, realizes that he doesn't have his teammate. Sobrero's actually going to open up a gap a little bit, so it kind of comes back together. Then Thies Benoot gets back on the front again and starts accelerating hard, so Sobrero just opens up the gap. This was a tactical mistake right here from Visma Leasebike. Either you want the pace to be completely fast, and if that's the case, then Jorgensen has to stay on Thies Benoot's wheel. Instead, Sobrero goes, hey, we don't have to go this fast. I don't have the legs right now to follow Thies Benoot, or he just doesn't want to. You pick and you decide whichever it is, but he opens up the gap. Thies Benoot gets up there. He's in nowhere land, looking back, nothing's happening, and then bam, we start seeing the first attack. It's Ciccone Lidl-Trek. He's throwing up the attack on the road. He's getting a gap on Sobrero, who's starting to blow. He goes off to the side. Jai Hindley's on the front. The gap is starting to extend. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds up to Ciccone. Ciccone's wrapping up all the original breakaway riders. He's got them all wrapped up at about 7.5 kilometers to go. He wraps up the last one. He's going solo. He's getting a gap, about 17 seconds on the group behind. We're coming into 6.2 kilometers to go. We get the aerial view looking down on the two Ineos riders of De Plus and Carlos Rodriguez. As they're coming around the Israel Premier Tech riders, we see that they're starting to blow, but not Derek G. He's got good legs here so far with just about 6 kilometers to go. Then De Plus throws in his attack with Remco Evenepoel, the Belgian kid from Pseudo Quicksteps, holding on to De Plus. Not for too long, he starts to blow. As he's blowing, Vlasov has to close the gap up there. Remco Evenepoel's pulling off to the right. As he's dropping back, then we see Vlasov's going full gas, pulling back De Plus. De Plus is on the gas, full pedal power right now as he's trying to blow this race up. Out the back, guys are dropping all over, but Primož Roglič is holding third wheel on his teammate there of Vlasov. Vlasov starts throwing the elbow left and right, looking back over his shoulder. I'm sitting on the Chesterfield thinking, Primož Roglič, he might not have form. Once you start seeing your teammates start looking back, throwing the shoulder there, and you got a threat up there with De Plus on the front and Ciccone up the road, you got to close the gap. As De Plus is starting to close the gap up to Ciccone, just before that, we back the film up. We see that Vlasov started to blow. He threw out the chicken elbow again. He knew Primož Roglič has to close it. He goes hard left. Primož Roglič does everything on the pedals to close up there to De Plus. Once he closes up to De Plus closes up to Ciccone. Now everything's all together. We start looking at the back of the group though. Remco Evenepoel starting to suffer. Vlasov's back there suffering. We see Lascano starting to get dropped. Then the cameras come back up to the front. It's 5.5 kilometers to go. Carlos Rodriguez throws in attack, the second one here from Team Ineos. With his attack, he's got an immediate gap. Jorgensen throws in his attack because he sees Primož Roglič is starting to suffer. When Vlasov pulled off, Primož Roglič can't close the gap up to the Ineos, so Jorgensen's going across the gap with Lawrence De Plus on his wheel. That'll be two Ineos riders up front out of a group of 3. Then Derek G realizes that Primož Roglič is hurt, and as they're coming out of the switchbacks, Derek G throws in attack. He's got Santiago Buitrago from Bahrain Victorious with him. But guess what? The Slovenian Primož Roglič can't hold the wheel. He's still getting gapped back there, and he's got some company because Ciccone's paying for his almost 3-kilometer early attack here on this last climb of Dauphiné. Those two riders back there, they're starting to get damage control because they see the gaps going out to 11, 13 seconds as the two riders with Primož Roglič on the front wearing the race leader's yellow jersey can't close up to the back wheel of the riders with Derek G and Santiago Buitrago closing up. Now we're coming into about 4.6 kilometers to go as Derek G throws in his attack. With this attack, he does the separation of that group of 5. De Plus starts coming out the back. Santiago Buitrago's coming out the back, but Carlos Rodriguez Jorgensen's locked onto his wheel. Now he's going to pull for about 600 meters. He's going to start looking back over his shoulder. He wants some help because Jorgensen's back there, but Jorgensen can't come through. We see again Derek G looks over his shoulder, looking back straight in the eyes there of Jorgensen, but Jorgensen still can't come through. He's going to go another 100 meters, look back again. Finally, Jorgensen knows he has to come through. With the acceleration of Jorgensen, we got 3 guys in the front group, and we see second place there. Derek G has to slot second because we know Carlos Rodriguez has his teammate behind, so he's sitting third. Now we look behind. Santiago Buitrago's trying to close the gap up to the group of three as he's dropping to Plus, but he's not going to make it across. The three riders are coming up to 2.5 kilometers to go as the course starts to flatten out. Now let's look back further down the hill because Primož Roglič is still back there clawing his way. The gap's up to about 20 seconds, 30 seconds it's starting to extend to. As we get up to that flatter section, we go further back down. We look at Remco Evenepoel's not that far back from Primož Roglič, only about 15-20 seconds as he's digging deep here on this last final mountain stage for some training for the Tour de France. Now as they drop down the descent, the only descent here at 2.5 kilometers dropping down, Derek G is going to come out of the bottom as the climb starts to come back up. He's gapped off with Carlos Rodriguez back there as Jorgensen has a little gap as the road starts to come back up. Carlos Rodriguez digs deep, starts sprinting to get back up to Jorgensen's wheel as he knows the climb is starting to go back all the way up to the finish. Now he's got to get up to the American rider's wheel if he wants a shot at winning today's stage final here at Dauphiné. He closes the gap. It's 1.5 kilometers to go. Derek G can't close the gap. He's opening up the gap. That means Jorgensen at this point in time, Jorgensen can go full gas now all the way to the line. Before, if I take you back to the first attacks at 5.5 kilometers to go from Carlos Rodriguez, later from Derek G, Jorgensen did not have the green light to just throw in 100%. He's 1 minute, 2 seconds down on Primož Roglič in second place. But third place was Derek G, only 11 seconds back from the time of Jorgensen. Now with Derek G dropped, Jorgensen has nothing to worry about. He's going everything into the pedals, full gas. As he comes into 1 kilometer to go, the gap is 41 seconds to Primož Roglič. Back to film up to that descent again for Primož Roglič. Well, he's got Ciccone with him. Look at Primož Roglič as he looks left over his shoulder. He needs some help. It's 2.5 kilometers to go. Now Primož Roglič is getting all the way into 1 kilometer to go. He's still looking back over his shoulder, needing some help from Ciccone. Go up front, 600 meters to go. Jorgensen's on the front. He's going to drive it all the way into 200 meters to go. Carlos Rodriguez is going to take over just under 200 meters. He's going to go all the way into the line, full gas. He'll win today's stage for Team Ineos, taking the final stage of Dauphiné. Second on the stage, well, that's Jorgensen there, the American, with a 6-second time bonus. Third on the stage right at this moment is Derek G. Then we look further back as we come into 200 meters to go. The gap's up to about 30 seconds there for Primož Roglič. He's got to drive it all the way into the line. He'll secure the race leader's jersey by only 8 seconds when it's all said and done to finish the Dauphiné with the race leader's yellow jersey still on his back. Now what happened to Remco Evenepoel? Well, he came in only 10 seconds back from the time there of Primož Roglič. So the Belgian kid, Remco Evenepoel, the Slovenian kid, Primož Roglič, not much of a kid. He's got 2 kids of his own and he's married. But he has the race leader's jersey. Remco Evenepoel still finishes in the top 10. Jorgensen will finish second on GC. Derek G gets his podium here at the World Tour level and riding in fine form here. And when we start looking at the interviews afterwards, well, Primož Roglič said it was close. He had to fight all the way to the end, but he's not on top form. Now, what's he mean by saying he's not on top form? He crashed on stage 4 of the Basque Country, guys. He crashed 2 times here at Dauphiné. When we start looking at the interview from Jorgensen afterwards, he said his staff said they still believed he can win. It's true. The big takeaway here from Jorgensen is that his form stayed steady over 3 mountain climbs. He's getting ready for the Tour de France. He's got to work for Jonas Vingegaard, or if Jonas doesn't show up, he's racing for GC himself. So he showed here today at Dauphiné, the 3rd stage of the mountain stages here at Dauphiné, that he can do repeat climbs with the best riders in the world. But one thing they're kind of leaving out when they're doing the interview, yes, he stayed steady throughout this week here of Dauphiné, but Primož Roglic's form dropped on this last stage. How do I know that? Well, I know that because Santiago Buitrago's in front of him, De Plus is in front of him, Carlos Rodriguez is in front of him, and Jorgensen is in front of him. So it says to us that Jorgensen's form didn't necessarily go better, but Primož Roglic's form did go worse. Now, I told you guys after the crash from Primož Roglič and that massive crash that they had on the wet road stage going down at 70 kilometers an hour, sometimes it could be the next day they're bad. Sometimes it could be stages 6, 7, or 8. Right now, what I'm looking at from Primož Roglič, and you start seeing Vlasov had a bad day here too, is that it could be calories because both riders went bad from Bora Hansgrohe. It could be something else, but it could be the crash. Once you get in the crash, it realigns the bones and the joints in the body. Once you start racing, once you start pushing hard on the pedals and stuff, I don't think the body's aligned. Then you start getting worse and worse throughout the stages. So as far as we're concerned for the Tour de France, Primož Roglič won here at Dauphiné. He knows that, but he also knows that something's wrong here on this stage 8 because he got worse, not better. That could be from lack of training and racing. We know he doesn't race since stage 4 of the Basque Country crash. But we also know that he crashed 2 times here, so that could be the reason why he's bad, or it could just be bonking. When you look at his expression afterwards as he's hopping on his trainer, you see his eyes are kind of tired there as he was giving handshakes there to Jorgensen, the American rider from Visma Lease bike. But also want to point out he's got his undershirt still on at this moment too. Today's stage was pretty hot. You looked at a lot of riders. Ciccone was zipping up his jersey at the top of that 2.5 kilometers to go before they dropped down the descent. And we know Ciccone was doing the same thing when he was there with Primož Roglič, so the weather must have been warm coming up the climb. So Primož Roglič overdressed for the climb for sure. Possibly it's the crash, possibly it's calories, possibly he just hasn't raced enough. So there's a lot of questions, and we're only 20 days away from the Tour de France. Primož Roglič has to figure out what caused him to go worse on this final stage. Remco Evenepoel said afterwards he's kind of happy with how his form's progressed since he stayed so close to the front riders here. But he still lost about 48 seconds, 58 seconds on today's stage. So when we look at Remco Evenepoel, he's still got to find some better form. Primož Roglič has to find some better form. They got 3 weeks to do it, but really 18 days to do it between now and the first stage of the Tour de France. A couple of those days are going to be travel to and from the Tour de France and to and from their house and here at Dauphiné. And then they're going to need a couple rest days. Few before a few after Dauphiné, a few before the Tour de France, excuse me. So they really got about 10 days, a week and a half of solid training to get ready for the Tour de France. It's a tight window, but I think Primož Roglič and Remco Evenepoel will both make the Tour de France on top form. 100% form? Ooh, difficult to say. 98% form? I can say that for some clarity up here for sure on the butterfly effect. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.